It's around 3:30 in the morning in Brentwood, Los Angeles. Inside a quiet Spanish-style house at the end of a dead-end street, a housekeeper stands in a dark hallway staring at a bedroom door. The door is locked. A thin line of light glows underneath it. She knocks. Nothing. She calls the name on the other side, the most famous name in the world, and the house stays silent. In a few hours, that silence will become the biggest mystery in Hollywood history. Because 60 years later, no one still agrees on what happened behind that door. The woman behind it was Marilyn Monroe. To understand that locked door, you have to know who was behind it. 6 months earlier, Marilyn Monroe had done something she had never done in her life. She bought a house. Not a mansion, a small hacienda at the end of Fifth Helena Drive, with white walls, a red-tiled roof, and a swimming pool out back. It was the first home she had ever owned by herself, at 36 years old. Set into the tile by the front door was an old Latin motto. Translated, it read, "Here, my journey ends." She was, at that moment, the most photographed woman on the planet. Her face sold magazines on 6 continents, and she was completely, quietly alone. Weeks before, the studio had fired her from her own film, calling her unreliable, difficult, a problem. The woman the whole world wanted was out of work, out of her marriage, and living behind those white walls with almost no one she could trust. The distance between who she was to the world and who she was at night had never been wider. Saturday, August 4th, 1962. The morning starts ordinary and turns heavy. Marilyn wakes late in the ivory silk robe she likes to wear around the house. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, a quiet older woman hired only months before, moves through the rooms. A publicist who stayed the night, Pat Newcomb, slept 10 hours. Marilyn barely slept at all, and it shows. By early afternoon, a photographer arrives to talk about magazine covers, and deliveries come and go. But under the small talk, something is off. Marilyn is agitated, exhausted, running on little sleep and a lot of pills. So a call goes out. In the late afternoon, her psychiatrist pulls up to the house. His name is Ralph Greenson, and he is not a casual doctor. He sees Marilyn almost every day. He steps inside, asks the publicist to leave, and closes the door with his patient. On the nightstand in the bedroom sits a small bottle of Nembutal, a sleeping pill strong enough to be dangerous. Whatever they talked about that evening, Greenson would spend the rest of his life being asked about it. For a moment that evening, there was warmth. The phone rang around 7 o'clock, and it was good news. Joe DiMaggio Jr., the son of the baseball legend Marilyn had once been married to, was calling to tell her he had broken off an engagement he never wanted. She was thrilled for him. He said she sounded happy, completely herself, nothing wrong. That call matters because it is one of the last times anyone heard her clearly alive. But warmth was not the whole picture. Around Marilyn that summer was a strange orbit of people. There was Newcomb, the publicist she had quarreled with that very morning. There was Peter Lawford, an actor, a party host, and the brother-in-law of the President of the United States. And in the shadows behind Lawford were some of the most powerful men in America. Names that would later attach themselves to her story, whether the facts allowed it or not. Marilyn had spent her whole life being wanted by everyone and protected by no one. On her last night, that had not changed. The people closest to her all had something to manage. Almost none of them were simply her friends. By 7 o'clock, Greenson had gone home. He had asked Eunice Murray to stay the night, which was unusual, and Murray settled into a back room. The house went quiet. Then, sometime after 8, the phone rang one more time. It was Peter Lawford, calling to ask why Marilyn had not come to his dinner party. And this time, she did not sound like herself at all. Her voice was thick and slow, the words sliding into each other. Lawford would say he could barely understand her, and then she said something he never forgot. She told him, "Say goodbye to Pat, say goodbye to the president, and say goodbye to yourself, because you are a nice guy." Then her voice trailed off into silence. The line was still open. Lawford sat there holding a dead phone, suddenly frightened, calling her name into a receiver that had gone quiet. He thought about driving over. Friends talked him out of it. So instead he started making calls, trying to reach anyone who could go check on her. And still, no one went to the house. Here is where the story stops making sense. Marilyn hung up that phone sometime after 8. The coroner would later estimate she died between 8:30 and 10:30 that same night. For the next several hours, almost nothing about this house can be explained. Lawford's calls set off a chain. His agent tried to reach the psychiatrist. Then they called Marilyn's lawyer, who called the house directly. Someone answered. Eunice Murray, by her account, told him everything was fine. Marilyn was asleep. Nothing to worry about. Go to bed. But if the coroner was right, by the time that call came, Marilyn may already have been gone. Over the years, the accounts of that night would shift and contradict each other. People changed their stories. Some later claimed an ambulance was quietly called to the house before dawn and told to say nothing. Others swore no such thing ever happened. To this day, no single timeline covers those missing hours without a hole in it. What is certain is this. For a stretch of that night, the most famous woman in the world was dying or already gone in a locked room, and the people in her house kept saying everything was fine. Around 3:30 in the morning, Eunice Murray woke up. She could not say exactly why. Something in the house felt wrong. She walked into the hallway and saw it. A band of light glowing under Marilyn's bedroom door. That was strange. Marilyn kept that door open, or unlocked, almost always. Murray knocked. She called her name. Nothing came back. She tried the handle. It was locked from the inside. Now frightened, she did not call the police. She called Ralph Greenson, the psychiatrist. He raced over in the dark. When he arrived and still got no answer, he went around the outside of the house to the bedroom window, and he broke the glass. He reached through, pushed the drapes aside, and looked in. Whatever Greenson saw in that room, he understood at once that it was over. He turned back to the housekeeper standing behind him and said just a few words. "We have lost her." And yet, even then, with the truth now plain, the one call you would expect them to make, the call to the police, still did not come. Not for a long time. The first police officer reached the house at around 4:25 in the morning. His name was Sergeant Jack Clemens, and he had taken the call at the station himself. By the time he arrived, Marilyn had been found for a while. The doctors were already there. And the first thing Clemens noticed was that the scene felt wrong. It looked, he said later, too neat. Marilyn was lying perfectly straight, arranged in what he called a soldier's pose, not the tangled way a person usually falls asleep. Empty pill bottles sat lined up on the nightstand. But the detail that stayed with him for the rest of his life was a small one. To swallow that many pills, dozens of them, a person needs water. And in that bedroom, Clemens could not find a single drinking glass. The plumbing, he was told, had been shut off. He never stopped believing that someone had tidied that room before he ever walked in. And no one has ever fully explained the gap, the long silent stretch between the moment they knew she was gone and the moment they finally picked up the phone and called for the law. The autopsy fell to a young coroner named Thomas Noguchi. He worked carefully because he already knew the whole world would be reading. In her blood, he found a massive amount of Nembutal and a second sedative, several times more than enough to kill. His official finding was two words that have haunted the case ever since. Probable suicide, not certain. Probable. And almost immediately the questions started, and they never stopped. If she swallowed dozens of pills, why was so little found in her stomach? Why were there no traces of the yellow capsules in her system the way there should have been? Why no note? Investigators would reopen the file again and again over the next 60 years, and every time they reached the same frustrating place. Not enough to prove anything, too much to explain everything. If this one stays with you, subscribe to Mr. Last Day. Because around Marilyn, there had always been powerful names and a rumored diary that was never found. And by the time anyone looked closely, the room had already been cleaned. This year, another team of investigators rebuilt her bedroom, frame by frame, and went looking through the evidence one more time. They will not be the last. Marilyn Monroe has been gone for more than 60 years, and still, every few years, someone reopens the file, certain that this time the door will finally give up its secret. Maybe it never will. What we are left with is not an answer. It is an image. A woman the entire world was watching, in the one house that was finally hers, alone in a locked room in the dark, in the hours that no one, to this day, has ever truly explained.